Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dwayne Butcher of Flexware Innovation. I'm excited to bring to you a webinar centered around the topic of business intelligence. Just a few points of orientation before we dive in. We are recording today's session. Look for an email from me later today, maybe tomorrow morning, with a link to that recording. Please do consider sharing that with others in your organization. Great opportunity for you to have a strategic discussion amongst yourselves about your own business intelligence journeys. We've set aside an hour for today's session, and we have built in time for questions. We've had a number of questions already submitted and teed up, but if you do have questions throughout the session today, please submit those using the Q&A button at the top of your screen, if you would. And the earlier you can submit those questions, the better. Give me a chance to filter through those and combine duplicates and so forth. So for now, let me just briefly highlight our panel of presenters. We are thrilled to be joined by John Hubers of Langham Logistics, and then we have a trio of business intelligence experts from Flexware. You'll see on the screen Dustin Phillips, Sasha Reisner, and Jason Dang. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the business intelligence team lead, which is Dustin Phillips, and he'll take it from there. So Dustin, it's all yours.
All right. Well, Dwayne, thanks for kicking us off and getting us started. Yeah, welcome everybody. Glad that you're here and excited to dive a little bit into the journey, the business intelligence journey that Langham Logistics has been taking and how we've been happy to partner along with them on that. So John, again, thanks for your time. Thanks for taking time to join us and give us an inside peek into what's been going on. So glad to have you with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I think it'd be good to have the stage set, if you will. And I think we can best do that by having you, John, give us an overview of what Langham Logistics does, and then maybe giving us a peek into your career, maybe a little bit of how you ended up in the spot that you are today as the IT director, and tell us a little bit about what your daily work looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just a quick introduction to Langham. We were founded by Kathy and Margaret Langham in 1988, and their brother John joined them a year later. So the three siblings own Langham Logistics. We currently have 180 full-time employees. We specialize in warehousing and distribution as well as transportation. Moving shipments all around the world. We also have a strong presence in the pharma and life sciences areas, both in the transportation and warehousing segments. We've been an Indianapolis company since 1988, so very invested in the community and do a lot of things around that. Just not going to touch on all of these, but this is kind of a high-level overview of the services we offer. As I said before, we're very much into pharmaceutical and life sciences, both on the warehousing and transportation side. We do domestic and international transportation, so both within the United States as well as across the globe. We have a presence at the Indianapolis International Airport, where we manage the dock at the airport and deliver goods and services throughout through all the concessionaires at the airport. We also do supply chain management. So whether we're taking over a part of a company's supply chain or their entire supply chain, we're able to give them consulting or guidance, as well as managing all of those services and then providing them the analytics and reporting and visibility throughout that. And then, as I said previously, we do a whole host of warehousing and fulfillment services at our various facilities. This is a quick snapshot of all of our facilities across the country. We have 6 here in the central Indiana area, and Two of those are fully dedicated to life sciences, so they're temperature controlled warehouses, one in Whiteland and one in Whitestown, Indiana. Then we also have a life sciences dedicated facility in Phoenix, Arizona, and a warehouse in Carson, California that is dedicated to Toyota. Here is a snapshot of some of our life sciences customers. And, it goes from top Fortune 500 companies down to kind of smaller biotech firms. And then on the non-life sciences side, we kind of run the gamut there as well, from big companies to smaller companies that have specific businesses. So that's kind of a overview of Langham. For me personally, I graduated from IU, Kelley School of Business, as a finance major, actually, and then served 3 years in the U.S. Army as a finance officer. Then from there, I took a position in a kind of investment reporting position at a investment manager subsidiary of a large insurance company. And after being in that financial related position for a year, they asked me to move over into IT. They wanted to kind of use my business knowledge to create a trading platform, a trading system, where when in the mid 90s, there really wasn't anything off the shelf that met their needs. So they said that they could teach me the IT stuff, and they just wanted my business knowledge. So I learned everything IT-wise just on the fly and on the job, and developed that system, in '97, and it was in use till about 2018, so over 20 years. But as I was in that investment manager, that I kind of grew up in the IT field there. So started in application development, then led the application development group. I also served a 2-year stint as a Six Sigma Master Black Belt when the company implemented Six Sigma. But then in 2006, came over to Langham as director of IT. Gave me an opportunity to kind of get away from some corporate red tape and a bigger company to a smaller company at Langham that used technology and continues to use technology as a differentiator. And I appreciated seeing that, and they invested in technology. So that's one of the reasons why I came to Langham, was kind of the enticement of that. And then have been here since 2006 and growing the company and the IT team, and being able to implement technology throughout the organization.
And how large was Langham when you first joined? You said it was around 180 now, but what was it when you started off?
Yeah, I would say that we probably had probably about 50 people, and we just had the one building, our corporate headquarters, the one that was in the initial picture. So that was kind of our initial the initial footprint when I was here. So yeah, we only had one building and about 50 employees. So
wow. So you've got to see it really grow for those last 17 years. That's got to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a great journey, and looking forward to continued growth.
And I think, speaking of growth, kind of leads to the fact that as you grow, you have to put systems in place that help people do their work at scale a lot better. And I think that's part of one of the reasons that we're talking is at some point, you realize that a number of people were trying to get data out of systems that perhaps you were implementing and really taking a long time to do that, or maybe not getting the right information that they needed at the right time. So I'm wondering if you can help take us back in time to a point where you realized, or where Langham in general started to realize, that maybe a BI type solution is what we needed, something that's more scalable. What was happening around that time? Were you hearing disgruntlement or requests from people that were just becoming too much to handle from your team or otherwise? Just kind of curious what that was like.
Yeah. So we, when I came here in 2006, we already had a data warehouse where all of our users were pretty adept at running SQL reporting service reports that we had developed a host of those that they were able to get kind of detailed data out of the system. And then they would massage it, into presentations or graphs or whatever that they wanted to do. There wasn't really much inherent graphs in the data that they were getting out. But it was easy for them to access that kind of detailed data. So, as time went on and as the BI tools out in the market, matured and became more available, especially with Microsoft Power BI and how that was, more cost effective than some of the other solutions that were out. And as it grew as a platform, internally, our team, I started to see at least that type of access to data would benefit our users and our customers. And so we kind of watched it for a while and would maybe internally kind of try to teach ourselves some of that. And as those tools matured more, it got to a point where I felt like our business could definitely benefit from it. And then as you stated, the seeing that having that data a little bit more accessible and a little bit more interactive would benefit both our internal people and our customers. So that's so then we started to do some more internally, but kind of quickly realized that we really didn't have the internal expertise to build out the platform that we wanted to, especially as quickly as we wanted to do it. And so that's when we turned to you guys and Flexware and really utilized the experts. And because we try to keep ourselves somewhat of a lean organization as far, especially in IT, and be able to outsource the experts where we feel it's a valuable thing. And so it made a lot of sense to partner with Flexware in this, and and we've been very happy since then.
Wonderful. And I am curious, in that period where you started to kind of dig into some of these new tools themselves, I'm assuming that there must have been a point where y'all had to make that decision of either purchasing some new tool set or trying to build up the expertise in-house. So I'm kind of curious of the conversations that happened around that. I mean, was there much convincing to do from people above you that we needed to invest more in this specific area, or was it more of an assumption that just needed to be stated and you got the thumbs up pretty quickly?
Yeah, no, I think that there wasn't a whole lot of convincing that needed to be done, and frankly, the business was wanting it, and so I think everyone was on the same page, and we realized that that was something that we just didn't have in house. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of convincing, and we're I guess I don't know where we are in the BI continuum as far as compared to other companies. I know bigger companies probably were more of the earlier adopters of it, but I felt like there was enough people internally that knew about BI and have seen it in other places. That everyone realized that was where we needed to head.
Well, it's good to have those champions in-house because not every company has that. So it's nice that you had some people who have that experience elsewhere and were able to back you in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. From the top down, from Kathy Langham, our president, all the way down, that people see the value in it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I'm wondering, as you talked a little bit about Langham's business model and what services you offer. I think we got a little bit of a glimpse as to what kind of data is critical for the teams within the business to be looking at, but I'm kind of curious, what is, from your perspective, what is some of the more critical data and trends that people are looking at over time? And we'll get to see some of that later, but in your perspective, what are some of the regular things that people are checking in on as far as, looking at the data?
Well, I think for it starts with our finance area and our CFO, Tracy Geisel. She sees the value in being able to dig into the financials. Instead of having to go to our accounting system and run reports out of that, the ease of use and access of having the financial data in the BI has been huge, and she's been, she's really pushed the development of that, and has been a real critical force on that side of it. And then on our more operational sides, both on the transportation side, both our internal teams, they want to be able to see trends, from whether it's on time delivery, on time pickup, what drilling down to specific customers or specific modes of transportation, whether it's truckload or LTL or parcel, being able to dig into those segments of data and be able to spot trends, or even how the operation is doing themselves, and being able to manage their teams through the BI, and then being able to use that same data to present to our customers. Our sales team and key account managers have quarterly business reviews with our customers. And so they are able to pull up that BI with the customers and discuss the customer's supply chain using the BI. And that's those conversations and being able to use that BI. They're just getting to that point of doing that. So they haven't done it with all the customers yet, but it's definitely been getting more and more as time goes on. And then on the warehouse side, again, kind of similar to the transportation side, how efficient are we in picking things in our warehouses? Are we getting them out the door on time? And are they being delivered to the customers on time as well? So, and monitoring our capacity in our warehouses. So now that we have 8 facilities, it's hard for our director of warehousing to kind of have a high level overview of what's going on in all of those facilities and what's the capacity, and for our leadership teams to know, okay, our warehouses are getting full, do we need to look to building another facility? Where would there be appropriate place for that facility be? So we've built and continuing to build that type of capability into the BI to give not only leadership that visibility, but also down to the supervisor level. So that's the great thing about the BI, is that it can span, the various levels of an organization, and people can kind of look at it in different ways, or obviously you can present it in different ways as well.
I love that mentality of kind of democratizing the data, making sure that the top folks in the organization understand what it's indicating, as well as the folks who are closer to the work itself that's being done, whether that's working directly with customers or working on things internally. I mean, if everyone can get on the same page there, that just helps your organization as a whole much better than if everyone's kind of doing their own thing, right? So
absolutely. And then that kind of brings up another point in my mind, is that everyone's looking at the same source of data. So that's always a discussion at times, especially when maybe one group is pulling data from the operational system, one group is pulling it from the data warehouse, somebody else is they're pulling from different places, and then they're also kind of adding their own, oh, well, I want to kind of exclude this data because I don't care about it. And so then people have different views of the data. They may even have different numbers that, kind of are in conflict when maybe they're talking about a certain customer or whatever. And so the BI, I think, also helps make it the data access a lot easier so that people are pulling it from that same spot.
Yeah, the single source of truth, as we sometimes call it, at least on our BI team. And I think to get that single source of truth, you really have to have a good architecture in place with a good data model supporting that so that people trust the data. And so with that, it probably would be good to transition now to taking a peek behind the curtain and looking at how your architecture in general is set up. And for that, we're inviting Sasha Reisner into the conversation. Sasha is one of our BI architects on the team, and she's been with Flexware for a little over 3 years now. So Sasha, glad that you've decided to join us as well today. Glad that you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, John.
Hey, Sasha.
I'm going to share
So
my
yeah,
screen.
go ahead.
All right, so let me know if everybody sees this okay.
Got it.
Great. So this is Langham's Enterprise Data Warehouse Architecture. This is their reference architecture, what we call a reference architecture document. And what this shows us is our, or rather Langham's source of truth. So we call it a source of truth or a system of record or your operational system. It's all kind of, this is where the data is collected and typically resides for at least a little while. And in Langham's case, we have got several different systems. So they are working with a logistics company, an ILS transportation management system. They're working with Dynamics GP. Those two are on premise. And then they also use a lot of Azure, which is really great to see that they are fully embracing their digital transformation and cloud architecture. So they do have some replica pools that have some of their databases already in the cloud, but maybe not. That is also their operational reporting system. So we have to protect those systems. We have to kind of keep those separate, let them do what they do best, and we source that data. So the other one type of systems that they've got is they've got these third-party applications. So TransSolution, which is a subsidiary of MercuryGate, QT9 for their quality, SQBX for some transportation, the CX1 data, which is call center, Ring Central, Pipedrive, which is sales, and then lastly, ADP, which is some of the financial data that they have. And how we've been able to leverage and access that are via APIs. So using Data Factory, which is our ingestion tool of choice for this solution, we can hit those different APIs and those various on-premise source systems, as well as their cloud replica servers, and load that data in, just like Mario does with their pipelines, into their data lake and or their SQL Server data warehouse, which we call our EDW, the Enterprise Data Warehouse. So they have their data warehouse that they built, and we've kind of left that alone. We use that as a source for some of the data, but we are building out this enterprise data warehouse. And one of the most powerful features of that is that we are conforming the dimensions as we are building that. And in layman terms, that means that a company in system, we'll say MercuryGate, or their ILS system, their transportation system, or in their GP system, we're conforming that data, that customer dimension, into one so that we can look across these different systems and be able to slice and dice.
Okay, just interrupt one second. So that's not what Sasha's saying there. Is a really huge benefit for us because we did have all of these disparate systems, and this different systems, like the customer may be named one thing in one system, and then there's a slightly different name in the other system because this is how the system records the customer name, and being able to tie all of that different data together in one spot in the enterprise data warehouse, so that we can say, okay, give me all of the customer X's data, whether it's in the transportation system or the warehouse system or the quality system. Being able to bring all of that data together in one spot and in one report is huge, and it's something that we hadn't done before. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about is that data integration layer. The reporting, which we're going to get to here in a minute, is built off of that integration layer, and really that's where our one source of truth is. Our EDW is our one source of truth, and we build from our data model, if you will, our star schema, which is why I've got it designed like that, where we have a star with our fact in the center and dimension. It's again BI terms that you would hear if you're using any type of BI tool. That's how we organize the data so that it can be best used and most efficiently used within a reporting tool like Power BI. By organizing the data that way, it allows for the report to be as performant as it can. We can also create certified workspaces in this architecture and certify those data sets. So with Power BI behind the scenes, it creates data sets with your data model in it. We can certify those and allow those for self-service access. We're getting there. We're almost there. We're there with the financial. We're getting there with some others. And yeah, finally on the left, we're getting to our daily dashboard app. So Power BI has apps that consolidate all of these different reports. You can have multiple reports in an app. And that's just how they organize read-only access to the data. So you know that when you're allowing somebody access, as we have here, our data ninjas, when you're allowing your data ninjas access to a report, that they can't change anything, that they can't break the report by allowing them access to the app to read only. So I'm going to turn it over back to Dustin there.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of follow-up questions, Sasha. So first of all, do you have to dress like a ninja to view these reports?
It's not requirement, but it's
a nice to have, right? Fair enough. Yeah, well, this is a really helpful look, and I think one question that we tend to get from other prospective customers is they'll very much hone in on a tool like Tableau or Power BI or what have you, and wonder, well, these kinds of tools seem pretty powerful. So, can we, kind of charge forward with just those tools and do the modeling and stuff in those tools versus building this all out in a database layer? So, kind of curious of what your response would be to that kind of question.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? The tool allows you to do that, and you can if you're going to do something kind of quick and dirty. But if you're going to do something where you're combining multiple systems together, you want to do that in a layer. You want to separate that out from your reporting. You want to be able to integrate that and be able to do some more advanced, like fuzzy matching. Say, you got customers with various spellings of names. You can do that in a database layer. You probably could do it in Power BI too, but then therefore you're really putting all your eggs in one basket. Your your presentation layer and your data set really becomes your data warehouse sort of ish, but not really. And then when you try to expand that out, maybe you hit limitations with size or what you can do transformation wise. So we really recommend separating this into layers so that you're using the right tool for the job.
Yeah, great recommendation. Wholeheartedly agree. And I'm curious, Sasha, since you're the main architect and have been for Langham's BI solution since we began working with John and his team, I'm kind of curious, what's a highlight been for you as you've worked on this integration layer space? Has there been any part of it that's been particularly interesting or fun to work on?
Oh, well, working with John and his team, like that's number one is like, when you're working with great people who love BI and Tracy, they all just love BI. That's makes the project wonderful, right? Just from the get-go. But the other part is technically, because I love technology and stuff, is those APIs, being able to work with these various APIs and figure them out and authenticate authentication methods for accessing that data. I kind of nerd out on that stuff. So yeah.
Nice. Well, yeah, really a great team, makes it very easy to work with. So I totally agree. And John, if I can ask a question back to you as we're looking at this, so many people who look at the reports that they're using daily, may have different understandings of what's going on behind the scenes at that data integration layer. So I'm kind of curious how you thread the needle between giving people, wonderful, powerful reports, but also giving them also kind of a behind the scenes look at what's going on behind the scenes to get it to the point where it's helpful for them.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're involved in that process, if it's somebody that, is kind of the subject matter expert, or somebody that we've got that's defined that particular, section of BI. They have conversations with Jason and Sasha about putting all that together. So there's an understanding there that they get of just building that the back end of that data so that they can get their BI and be able to see it and validate it and things like that. So that's kind of one avenue. And then, for the other users that are maybe just using it and weren't involved in the development of it, actually, it's a good question, because I try to do it as we're talking to people, but I think that's something that we could probably even do a better job, is just educating, the entire company about how this has been all put together. It just doesn't appear, one day. They may see it that way, but there's a lot that goes behind it. So that's actually a good point too. That's something that we can do better, is educate everybody about kind of the process that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a process, especially if someone is not familiar with this, it can take a while. So the key there seems to be patience, but also having a willingness to explain maybe at not of a technical level as you might normally, but at least show them and get them to appreciate all of the work that goes on behind the scenes. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But all that's behind the scenes work is important because it allows us to get to those really nice looking and helpful reports. And I think it'd be good to kind of transition over there and take a look at a sample of some of the reporting that you have. And that's where I'm going to turn things over to Jason Dang, who's the last fun friend that we'll introduce here. Jason has been with the Flexware team for a little over a year now. I think Langham was actually one of your first engagements or projects that you worked on, Jason. So you've nearly been working on this since day one. And so I'm excited for you to show a little bit of what you've built. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And John, thanks for, helping us out. Let me share my screen here. All right. So John mentioned about having champions, and that's been a huge benefit with this entire build out. Mostly because, when you're building requirements in the dark, it's hard to really capture what the user or what the business really needs. And so John did a great job of trying to coordinate and say, hey, this person's in charge of this, but you can also get a hold of this person if they can't get to it. So really, the work on this side that Sasha and I have done or couldn't be possible without John's kind of paving the way in the Langham side. So so this is just a demo app. Sasha mentioned Power BI app, which is basically a collection of reports and dashboards. This is not the actual one that the organization uses. It's just a kind of a snapshot of a couple of the reports. And some of the information has been, I guess, fuzzied, if so to speak. So it might not look like really coherent because I'm using things to cover up things like customer names and things like that. So anyways, so when you land on the app, it's just kind of like a welcome page. Kind of tells you a little bit about where some of the data is coming from. Some of these systems here are very familiar to folks that are in the organization, so it's not like a surprise. And so the way this is structured is over here on the left-hand side is the navigation. You've got the different dashboards for the respective areas of the business. So you've got warehouse, quality, transportation, airport. And then within these, you will have a bunch of tiles. This is what Microsoft calls these things. These are called tiles. And these tiles kind of just give you a high level bubbled up view of, like a glimpse of what's in the report. So in this case, we're looking at warehouse capacity. This is actually a really, really great report. As John mentioned earlier in this webinar, you've got all these locations. You're bringing more material, bringing in more products, or bringing in more basically stuff to stick into the warehouse. You got to make sure that you've got space, and that's the reason why this report was kind of developed. And this was originally, I believe, was kind of done manually using Langham's SSRS reports, and just kind of, it was only a snapshot. It was like once a week, and the person that was doing it was spending probably, I don't know, a couple of hours every week just kind of aggregating the information. But by the time that she was done kind of aggregating, saying here's where we are for each warehouse in terms of capacity, the data has been, it's changed because the capacity has changed. So let me jump in here. So I clicked into the warehouse capacity report, and this is what it kind of looks like. Again, you see a bunch of numbers here on the that would be represented as companies. But anyways, here are the locations that John mentioned. You got, let's see here, APX is Phoenix, Langham 74th is over at the corporate office. You've got Toyota warehouses, and you've got Langham Perry Road. So this is kind of like a snapshot, and what it's doing is it's updating a couple times throughout the day. So when a user lands on this page, it's the most current updated information, obviously within a couple hours. It's not real time, so we consider it like near real time. So you can click around and you can change different warehouses. You can change, like this here is set up to switch between a percentage, a quantity, and a standard pallet equivalent. So a standard pallet equivalent is saying, let's say you got a double size pallet, which is basically, I don't know what the exact number or measurements of a standard pallet is, but there's a ratio that's been added to our data warehouse to kind of help us with that calculation. So a standard pallet is equal to 1, and everything else is kind of based off of that. So like an eighth of a pallet here would be literally 1/8 of a standard size pallet. So a user can switch back and forth between the total quantity. So this is just counting the number of locations in each warehouse. This is, if you notice here, I've got a little switch here. It's an occupied versus open. So this is now occupied. So in Langham Perry Road, you've got an occupied number of locations of 22,000 and change. And the max capacity for this location is 23,000 and change. So very, very much close to capacity. If you switch over to the standard pallet, again, it changes a little bit. And then this is what it would look like if you were to kind of equalize all the different types of pallet sizes and things of that nature. So I'm going to switch over to the open. So if you switch over to open, it's obviously the inverse. It's going to show you where you have space. So Whiteland is a brand new warehouse. They opened up, I forget exactly when. I think it might have been end of 22. So they have space. Well, they're quickly filling it up, obviously, but you can tell here when they first turned it on or made it available, it was 0. And so now they have filled it up to 75%. Sorry, they have 0.25%. Sorry, so 25% occupied, and they still have 75% of open capacity. And so you can kind of see across the board here, like Langham Perry Road, they don't have a whole lot of open capacity, like we kind of saw earlier with the different quantity locations. Now, this is something that was really interesting too as well. One of the asks was to bring in or to layer sales data, incoming sales data. And this is where Sasha's magic with conforming dimensions and conforming customer names and things and such really comes into play. And the reason why is you get a salesperson who says, I got this huge deal. I'm going to bring in X amount of dollars and X amount of pallets into the business. and here's where we're thinking where we want to stick it, or this is where we want to, have the business be stored in these locations. Well, problem is, like I said before, the person who was in charge of the warehouse capacity reporting was doing it manually. She didn't have direct access to the sales data, for one, and then so she would have to wait for somebody to send her information, and then to kind of layer that together in her process was pretty tedious. So we kind of did the work for her by helping her out, and also the business in general. So you can see here, if you do occupied, if you look at all the different locations, Langham Perry Road has the most occupied by percentage. Now, if I turn on this include pipe drive, so pipe drive is their sales application. We turn this on, and now you notice there a bunch of stuff turns red. What this is indicating is that these areas that are red, should the sales opportunities, they're listed out here by customer key or customer number. This is pretty generic, but you can kind of tell that if all of these opportunities become actual wins in the organization, for the organization, this is what would happen. You would blow out Langham Perry Road by a substantial amount. And if you really wanted to know more about it, you could right click on it and drill through, which is a nice feature. So if you look at the detail, here's all your the detail regarding that specific warehouse and the respective customers, and where they are, who the salesperson is, number of quantities that could impact that particular warehouse. And again, same thing with like these are like location types or the sizes. So like here, it looks like there's a lot of freezer locations. Again, this obviously would, being over 400% over capacity is a problem. So again, but these are just kind of like more like a business and sales planning tool to kind of say, hey, if this is indeed what's happening, should we consider expanding an existing location, or should you build out a whole brand new warehouse to help offset some of this, offset the opportunities that are coming? So I'm going to hit a couple other ones here real quickly. This is a quality report. There's a bunch of other items within this report itself. This is just a couple of items that we decided to kind of pull into the demo here, but these are looking at like audits, their QMS system, which is pretty interesting, and that's something I'm very familiar with. So number of non-conformances, and you can switch back and forth between different types of like statuses, categories, different areas of the business, like your process. There's a huge number in safety and temperature monitoring. And also you can trend. That's the other thing that's really, really neat about this. You can trend across time. There's not a whole lot of data in here because I think the business decided to start January 1st. So you're not going to see a whole lot of data coming out of the quality system here. But you can also filter, like traditional filters. You can click on things like, I want to see this information or that information, or show me all my open items, show me all my closed items, things of that nature. And it's just a kind of a pretty comprehensive report. And then the end user who's kind of helping us, he's been pretty helpful, kind of telling us exactly how he wants things laid out. And again, all these have a drill through feature, which kind of lays out additional information. You can see like more details around that specific audit finding, or whatever the item is. Let's see here. Transportation side, again, very cryptic, so it's intentional. John talked about on-time delivery and on-time pickup. So these are again metrics that are kind of near and dear to the organization. Similar features, you can trend across time. You can see here, this is by day for, looks like just this year. So you can kind of see the very cyclic type representation of the data. Let's do this month. So here's just by this month. And you can kind of see on-time delivery, and on-time pickups. And over here, you can switch back and forth between pickups and deliveries. These are considered separate metrics. And I don't think this one doesn't have the drill through, but and then things like they want to look at, one of the features or questions was, we want to see if it was a Langham carrier. So you click yes or no. No, it's not Langham carriers. This is not Langham responsibility, but let's say, look, only Langham stuff. This is all Langham. And again, there's a bunch of, I think, service level group, which is kind of business specific. Again, kind of masked here, so it's not going to look like a whole lot of anything, but that's important information there. I don't know where else to go other than this is kind of the rough layout, and of course the actual application has a lot more in terms of reporting and a lot more things in here. And then obviously I'm not going to show the financial stuff, but that's pretty comprehensive as well, and it has a ton of other features and reporting bits in there, like embedding SSRS reports within the Power BI report itself. So a user can see what they see on the screen, and they can actually output a kind of formatted document that can take, and share amongst the organization. So, Dustin, I'll turn it back over to you. I don't know if you have questions for me or what the next steps are here.
Well, yeah, this is a fantastic overview, Jason. So thanks for kind of showing the highlights of each one. As we're looking at this, I have a question for John again, because I'm sure as more reports get built and they're used more often through your business, that people are going to ask for certain things to be tweaked, or maybe they'll want something new entirely that they've come up with as an idea for kind of something automated like this. And so I'm curious, from your side of things, how are you finding it? What's your process for kind of managing those requests coming in and prioritizing them? Because right now this is managed by your team essentially.
Yeah, we, it's not I guess a scientific process, and you have to work with, I work with, the other directors in the company, and the owners, and, together we determine kind of what the priorities are in the BI, and so then I kind of have to make the call a little bit on, okay, this is a quick fix here versus this is a little bit more development, needed. And it's a kind of a constant changing set of priorities to a certain extent. We have kind of guiding lights and higher level objectives that we still keep in sight and are moving down the road on. But as smaller requests come in, whether it's more of a bug fix or a situation where we the data, we need to change this calculation, as we looked at it more, it needs to change. So some of those take higher priority because they're in the BI that's currently being used versus something that is still being developed and not rolled out yet. So like I said, it's a constant changing set of priorities that that on a maybe not quite daily basis, but pretty close. I'm constantly kind of massaging that and trying to determine where we head.
Right. Yeah, it's an art and a science, basically.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and just looking at the time, I know that we'll probably have some questions that either folks have submitted ahead of time or have come up during this webinar. So I'll throw it back to Dwayne now and see if there's anything from his side that he's seeing that we might ask the general panel with us.
Yeah, so get ready to tee up a couple of your questions that you have, Dustin. Not a lot's come in just yet, but one question that I got offline here this is for John. Has this had an impact on your culture at Langham? You expressed how this has spanned several layers of the organization, and this person is just curious in what ways maybe it's changed the culture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're still kind of, I guess I would say, in our infancy of this, but I see that culture changing now. I see both from a higher level of leadership, they're going to the BI and wanting to use that as their primary kind of tool. So that is changing, as well as now it's starting, it's just starting to filter down to kind of the operational areas. And we're starting to deliver BI that is serving them more, and I'm starting to see that as well. So like I said, it hasn't been throughout the organization just yet, but it's quickly becoming that. So
Great. Yeah, you would certainly expect to see that over time. So
absolutely.
Another question that maybe is more outward focused. Have you been able to use your reliance on BI as a competitive advantage? Has this been even a source in a sales process that you've got this advantage maybe that your competitors don't?
Yeah, no, I think so. While I'm not close to all of that, our salespeople do use that both in perspective, when they're talking to prospective customers, as well as our current customers in their quarterly reviews, because it's a certain percentage of our business is just our current customers adding more business to us. And so, yeah, absolutely, they're using that in those conversations and talking about it. And something that we can deliver maybe against some of our bigger competitors is that and this goes not only for BI but throughout our organization, is that we're nimble and we're able to work with a customer and understand their needs. We don't try to fit our customers into a particular box and say this is the state, this is all you're getting, and this is all we can deliver to you, whether it's the services that we offer them or the BI and the visibility that we give them. If there are KPIs that they're interested in, or certain data elements that they want to track that are specific to their business, our processes, both in our operational systems as well as filtering it all the way through to the BI, we're able to deliver those certain data elements or certain views on data to our customers that are specific to them. And so that's a value add and how we try to separate ourselves from our competition.
That's great. Insightful answer. Thank you. So Dustin, I think maybe you have a question or two.
Yeah, maybe a couple of questions to you again, John, just to kind of as we start to close out our time. You talked about being at a certain stage of in the journey along building and continuing to build out your BI solution, and I'm curious from what you've heard from ideas from other folks that you're working with, or the ideas that you may have yourself. What's most exciting to you to think about as far as getting something built up in the future?
I mean, I think that just continuing to bring all of this data together, what really excites me is that we can bring all these different data elements and different disparate systems into one place where we can get the information in one spot. And even when we had our kind of more SSRS reports, some would be in one spot and some would be in another spot. And what we're trying to do when we're building these BI apps within Power BI is that I'm trying to put it all in one spot, so people aren't hunting around for different elements of data, and then bringing all that data together. Yeah, it's really exciting. And then as we look further down the road, we want to get to a point where we're bringing in industry data, so data that's not even our own data, but data that we can bump up our data against. How do we measure ourselves against industry?
I think
John, I think you went on mute there.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so how we measure ourselves against other industry type of data, and so bringing that in, as well as then eventually getting to a point where we can do self-serve, so that power users within the organization can have access to some of those data elements in the enterprise data warehouse and develop their own BI.
Yeah, good things to look forward to. And it definitely, I mean, you mentioned the self-serve point. I might throw a question back to Sasha briefly. To get to self-serve, Sasha, I know a lot of people talk about that. It can be a buzzword at times. So in your opinion, what needs to be in place to get people or an organization to that point?
So of course your enterprise data warehouse is to be conformed, organized, having all that data there. But then also more importantly, if you're using Power BI, is using some of those shared data sets. So back in the day, we used to build tabular models or cubes, and that was our source of truth. And we need to start thinking about, Power BI as that, as a replacement for a tabular model. So when you start thinking about that, then reports start getting built off of shared data sets and subject areas. So you have a data set for finance, you have a data set for operations or transportation and so on. Although it's still your one source of truth because it's coming off of your EDW, but it's organized by subject area so that the models can be performant. And when you're thinking about self-serve, you want to know, usually it's by area. A salesperson wants to go and build their own report. You can say, here's the sales data set, build what you want. All those metrics need to be defined and standardized and able to locate with friendly naming conventions and all of that. So there's a lot that goes into being able to self-serve, because you can build reports all you want, but then you could end up with 50 data sets for each report, the way that Power BI works, and then nobody can find anything. So it really needs to be a whole strategy around creating self-service and putting checks and balances in place so everything ties out.
Yeah. Let it grow in a healthy way, essentially. Put the trellis there and let the vine grow out from there, essentially. So I guess, John, as a concluding question, I'm sure that either someone here in this webinar or someone out in the future watching this replay may be in a similar situation to you. They may be another director of IT at their company or just another leader in their company who is considering going down this journey of BI and may not have all the information they need. And so I'm wondering if you were talking to them specifically, what words of wisdom would you offer them based on what you've learned as you've helped Langham mature its BI solution along that time?
Yeah, I think it's obviously getting buy-in from the top. Whether it's budget or just pushing, having it so that the top is pushing down to the rest of the organization that this is something that's a priority and that's important. For sure, that's where you have to start. But also trying to get those kind of the next layers down engaged in it, and that's been and it's not that those layers don't want to do it, but it's competing priorities. Everyone's busy. We're a fast growing company, so everyone's got a ton on their plate, and so trying to find the time to work with this particular subject matter expert so they can help spec out the what's needed for that area and definitions and how we want to define the BI for that particular area. So that's a challenge. And obviously when you can add more dedicated resources internally to do that, that's great. We don't have that luxury at the moment. So we work with our leaders in the different areas to try to either they can assign somebody in that area that heads up a particular specific sliver of whatever BI they're wanting, and try to break it down into kind of small pieces and make each person responsible for a small piece of it, that when it bubbles up and it becomes you have a lot once you're looking at the whole organization, but trying to break it off into smaller bites, and so it doesn't seem so daunting for that business area to tackle, and And then as they have more experience with it and they learn more about it, it becomes easier for them. And then they become more engaged as well because they see the benefits for their area.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is all about teamwork at the end of the day and making sure people know what they're responsible for and giving them the time to do it. So
Exactly.
yeah. Well, that sounds like a great way to conclude. So I'll throw it back to Dwayne to officially close us out.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Business intelligence is certainly one of those buzzwords that you hear a lot, and it's most often talked about theoretically. So it is great to hear kind of a practical story and see some practical ways in which BI is impacting a business. So for that, John, we thank you so much for coming on and telling your story here. And thanks too to Dustin, Sasha, Jason for taking part in telling that story. Thanks to everyone who is tuned in here, not only live, but those of you who are going to be watching on demand. If you have a need in maybe determining where you are in this business intelligence continuum, I know we've got some experts here at Flexware that would love to talk to you about that. I'd be happy to connect you with the right folks. Just a reminder, I will send out a link to the recording. That'll come out either late today or tomorrow. Please consider using this as a lunch and learn. Use it as an opportunity to strategize with your own team to determine where you are in your own journey and maybe what your next steps could or should be. So for now, I'm going to thank everyone again. And from Flexware, have a great day.